Okay, all right. So I guess we're on the air, as they say. So let's like I say, we're going to try to wrap up. We just got down to the verse 5. I wrote to kind of back up just a little bit to kind of recap what we meant. So we'll go. We'll start with verse 6, and we'll read verses 6 through 18, and try to finish up the chapter 10. So let's go ahead and offer a prayer as we get started. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you, Lord, for this day. Thank you, Lord, for the opportunity we have to be together. And I ask, Lord, just be with everybody at this time as we go through and endure the hot weather. We just ask for protection, that people will be able to escape harmful effects of the extra hot weather. And we thank you, Lord, for your word. We pray that you just open our minds and our hearts today. In Jesus' name. Okay. So, verses 5 through 18. So I'm going to ask Claire to read for me.
5 through 18.
Verses 5 through 18.
We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of God, and we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. And we will be ready to punish every act of disobedience once your obedience is complete. You are judging by appearances. If anyone is confident they belong to Christ, they should consider again that we belong to Christ just as much as they do. So even if I boast somewhat freely about the authority of the Lord, the authority the Lord gave us for building you up rather than tearing you down, I will not be ashamed of it. I do not want to seem to be trying to frighten you with his letters. For some say his letters are weighty and forceful, but in person he is unimpressive, and his speaking amounts to nothing. Such people should realize that what we are in our letters when we are absent, we will be in our actions when we are present. We do not dare to classify or compare ourselves with some who commend themselves. When they measure themselves by themselves and compare themselves with themselves, they are not wise. We, however, will not boast beyond proper limits, but will confine our boasting to the sphere of service God Himself has assigned to us, a sphere that also includes you. We are not going too far in our boasting, as would be the case if we had not come to you. For we did get as far as you with the gospel of Christ. Neither do we go beyond our limits by boasting of work done by others. Our hope is that as your faith continues to grow, our sphere of activity among you will greatly expand, so that we can preach the gospel in regions beyond you. We do not want to boast about work already done in someone else's territory, but let the one who boasts boast in the Lord. For it is not the one who commends himself who is approved, but the one whom the Lord commends.
Okay, so we kind of left off last week talking about how to take captive a thought. So this is the thing that we kind of talked about. One of the examples, I guess, in a negative sense, we used the example of Eve, especially Eve in the Garden of Eden, and the serpent, and how the serpent was actually, in a way, for Eve, took captive, as they say, captive the thought. The thought was that, of course, that it was wrong to eat of that tree of the knowledge of good and evil. That was her thought. That's wrong. You shouldn't do that. And the serpent came. How he took captive that thought was he introduced a doubt. So that's one of the, like, say, how do you take captive a thought? One of the things that, one of the tactics, not the, and a lot of times there's several different steps if I, like I said, as I've mentioned before, if you watch some of the guys that are supposedly have been noted as some of the best as far as what we call apologetics, people that are able to give a defense for the gospel or an argument, if you want to think about argument, um, in a debate, an argument for the gospel. One of the steps, like I always make reference to Robbie, he was probably to me one of the most, watching him, probably one of the most masterful at doing that. He would usually establish some common ground with that person and getting them to agree on some things that, okay, we both believe together on those things. And one of the, like I say, I was thinking about, usually he was invited to speak at universities, usually a secular university that he would be invited to speak at. But he would get these people that would come up and they'd want to debate him, or they'd have questions and then want to debate him. And then he would actually go through, there's rules of logic and reason. And he would go through and have them agree with him, okay, here's the rules for logical thinking, critical thinking, analytical thinking, and reason, and all those things, and they would agree with him. Okay, yeah, we both agree on those things. But then one of the things that he would do is begin to introduce some doubt in some of their ideas and their beliefs, and he would begin to chip away, and bringing up and creating some doubts in their mind. So then, like I say, that's the thing, and depending on where they're at as far as their beliefs. Of course, a lot of those people that he was obviously they had him debating were people that were atheists, and so you have to start where they're at, and their idea, like I say, would be, and you have to introduce some, like I say, sometimes documentation, whatever, but we talk about things that are reasonable and things that are logical. So an atheist, okay, well, there is no God, and then so that you begin, and that's when they would get down on the scientific level, and a lot of times they would do that by introducing questions, or explain to me, and then like, how is that possible? I mean, that's we've seen the scientists and the common belief amongst those people that don't believe in God was, well, here we all came about originally by this giant explosion, and usually one of the very first thoughts to start introducing a doubt in those people's mind is, well, you know what, to have an explosion, you have to have certain elements for an explosion to happen. You have to have certain chemicals and certain elements that creates an explosion. Where did that material come from? Well, obviously, number one, they usually cannot answer. They cannot answer that. And so that's the thing they would start picking at. Okay, so because the idea that the idea that there is no God, they usually have to accept the idea, the tenet that there has to be an origin. That's the idea. So that's the point that they would come up with, and it's like, well, so where did all these things, that this space dust or whatever you want to call it, where did it come from? What is its origin? That usually that starts the doubts. They begin to have doubts about, well, and usually try to get push that person to, push them to come up with answers. But that's the thing, then usually what happens is winds up frustration, because when they can't answer, they can't give you an answer. And one of the other things they would do too also is that they have been able also to kind of hammer away and chip away at some of these people's ideas. They would usually always go to refer to, oh well, some of our great physicists, some of the most intelligent people that we have, that are physicists, and people like Stephen Hawking, that was a long time scientist, physicist, and atheist. And it has been documented that at the end of his life, he actually admitted, I think I have made a mistake. I think I have made a mistake, and finally conceded that he believed there is a God. Well, that's one of their heroes, and they will bring that up. Well, yeah, so what about your big hero, Stephen Hawking? And now we have him talking about he made a big mistake, there is a God. Well, that's the thing. And it's, for some people like that, it takes a lot of time. Like I say, you're usually working with that person over time. It's not going to be like Perry Mason in the courtroom, and the surprise evidence that gets introduced in court, and just that quick that everything's solved, and change of heart, whatever. For some of those people, it takes a while.
Wasn't that kind of what Charlie Kirk did?
Yes, and that's the thing.
He would talk to them about what they thought, but then try to prove to them.
He said, prove you wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, prove you that it wasn't being obedient to God.
Right.
I mean, that's saying what you're saying there.
Yeah.
He would kind of.
He did.
He had a way of doing it.
Yeah, he was a good one. He was pretty good. And that he like I say, he reminded me a lot of like Robbie, because he was getting
around.
He
would turn it around
Yeah.
some way and prove to them that they wasn't right.
Right. Yeah. He was being invited also. Same thing to a lot of secular universities to set up. Of course, that was all being, of course, promoted and done by his organization, which was, what was the name of it? I can't remember. Something America or something. I can't remember what the name of that group was. Robbie was basically, there would just basically a lot of times being invited to universities, usually by philosophy, their school's philosophy department, whatever, and want him to come in. He just, if you watch him, he has, I guess you say, a lot more polished. Huh?
Turning Point USA.
Yeah, Turning Point USA was a Charlie Kirk's organization. Robbie just had a lot more polished way of presenting the material, and he was just very masterful. Now, here's the thing. I don't anticipate probably any of us ever becoming that, I guess you say maybe that good at, or that successful at, like maybe somebody like a Charlie Kirk or a Robbie. But one of the things we have to understand is how you take captive a thought. And of course the thing is too, Robbie had his target population too. Also, that makes a big difference on how you prepare. He actually came out of the Muslim world. He's from India. He was originally from India. I thought this is the thing I learned, and one of our psychiatrists, I thought, Indians, people from India were Hindu. I just assumed you're from India, you're Hindu. And one of our professors, one of our psychiatrists at Taliaferro, Dr. Azim, uh, Fazalat Azim, um, and got to visit with her one day, and I don't remember how it came up. I said something about being Hindu, and she was like, "No, I'm Muslim." And I thought, "And what?" And she said, "Oh, in India, there is a large percentage of people that are born and raised in India that are Muslim." So Ravi, that was the deal. He was born in India. He came up, like I say, of course, I think his family were Hindu, but in the process of coming up and growing up and going through his journey, his faith journey, he studied. So, for instance, he studied the Quran. He knew the Quran forwards and backwards about as good as any Muslim did. Well, and especially after he became a Christian, and he's got a mission. He wants to talk to and try to convert Muslims. He knew, I have to know the Quran. So a lot of times when we're preparing to talk to people, and as he says here, taking captive every thought, we need to know the other person's side of the story. And I think I shared, I don't know if I did it last week, but I shared that the Harry Ropp Sr., that was one of our mission. Every year we had a week of missions, and that missionary for that week, Harry Ropp Sr., who was a mission to the Mormons. It started by his son, Harry Rock Jr., and then his son was mysteriously killed in a plane crash, and his father took over and carried on the work. But he talked about how that when those Mormons come knocking on your door and try to convert you, one of the things they do to prepare those people before they even are allowed to go out and start knocking on doors is they give them a curriculum, and it shows them. Now here's every question. If you're talking to a Christian, or because they consider themselves Christians, but whatever, the average person, here's all the questions that they're probably going to have, and here's all the arguments that they're going to try to bring up to you, and they want those Mormon, they call missionaries, to know every argument that I would bring up to them. And they study that, and so they study how to respond to that. That's how they do it. And the point is this: so if I'm gonna win them, I need to know all of their arguments. I need to know what they believe and all of their arguments. So that I'm prepared whenever they come back with certain answers, I've got an answer for that answer, kind of thing. So, the preparation. How do you take captive every thought? Know what that audience that you're talking to. Know all their positions. Know what they believe. Anticipate what they're going to come back to you with. Now, Paul, obviously, as he talks to a lot of the Jewish people, nobody knew the material better than Paul, because he was, as he's pointed out in 2 Corinthians, he was a Jew of all Jews. I mean, he grew up to study the law in the best schools that there were, and he knew the law better than anybody. So, but it also was, because it was Scripture, it was his ammunition as well. And like I say, we talk. You see, we read Scriptures. What it talks about is he's talking to the people. He talks about he would confound them. They kept trying to bring up arguments to him And every argument they tried to bring it up to him, he would just shoot him out of the saddle and bring up such solid logical answers. They had no answer for every point that he would make, to the point they finally would just get up and shut up and Jesus was the same way too. When like I say, they were trying to bring up points that he was bringing up points to them, and he couldn't. They got to where they couldn't answer Jesus because they didn't. There's nobody that knew the scriptures and law better than Jesus. Well, this is the thing. So, if we're going to really be serious about talking to people, taking captive thoughts, talking to people and wanting to bring them to Christ, we have to know what kinds of things, what kind of questions are they going to have, what beliefs do they have. I need to know what is your background, what are your beliefs, and then the most important thing to take captive every thought is your attitude. You need to come, and that's one of the things that I watched Robbie. They supposedly, this young guy comes up and they introduced him as a scientist, and he was a scientist working in the university, and he had these questions. And come to find out, I remember reading about that. Come to find out, he was actually a student that worked in their laboratory. He wasn't really a scientist, but that's why they introduced him as a scientist here at this university. He was a student that was working in the lab. Anyway, after he confounded this kid, you could tell he was just so confused. He was just like, he just wanted to sit down. But Robbie stopped him and said, "Listen, when we're all done with this, can I meet you after we're done?" He said, "Because I see you've got lots of questions. I want to help you, maybe answer some of your questions, or maybe help you whatever." And that was the point. He's coming to him with an attitude, I care. That's like, I don't want to just win an argument. I'm not here to win arguments. I'm here because I care about you and I want people to know truth. I want people to know and come to truth. And that genuine concern for that person. And that's probably one of the most important things when we're talking to people. You got to come across to them is, this is the thing, is, I'm not trying to win brownie points, and I'm not, it's just not a competition and seeing how many people I'm here because I'm concerned about your relationship with God, your soul. And I want to help you any way I can. I care. Okay. So, anyway, he talks about and speculations, every lofty thing raised up against the knowledge of God. I think about speculations. Here's the thing. Right now, especially in our day and time right now, all you have to do on TV, social media, whatever, there is a lot of stuff out there, speculations. Okay, here's an example that we see that's going on. People are just really talking about speculations. UFOs, aliens, Bigfoot, all that stuff. And various other whatever.
Sasquatch.
Yeah, Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, Abominable Snowman, whatever you want to call him. Where it depends on whatever. Oh, and it goes on and on from there. We now hear people talking about the Anunnaki and Nephilim and now the new thing is, okay, some of these alien quotation. Some of these aliens are actually not individuals from another planet, but they're interdimensional. That's a new term. I just heard not that long ago, but it's interdimensional. The idea is that it's kind of an idea of time travel, parallel. Instead of time, going forward into time and going back into time, now they're believing that past, present, future are actually all existing concurrently, and it's the idea that going from the past to the present to the future, you're not going forward or backwards, you're actually crossing over into different parallel lines. And these people are interdimensional. So in other words, these people that are flying around with flying saucers is actually people from Earth, but they are from the future, and they just happen to cross over into our timeline, kind of thing. Okay. Guess what? Some of that stuff now, Christians are having to. We got a lot of people out there that's buying into a lot of this stuff. Now we got to come up with how are we going to address this, and how's because they're thinking about, okay, I need to fit all of this into now my Christian belief. How are we going to answer some of this stuff? Okay. You know what the most recent explanation is? I don't know if anybody's been following and watching much of this. And it's probably
Turn it off.
Okay, well, yeah, that's one thing. And it's probably one of the most plausible explanations that I have heard, especially when it fits into some of our what we know about the end of time, the end days, the Antichrist empowers the Satan empowers the Antichrist, the supernatural ability to do miracles and things. All of these entities, they call them entities, are actually demonic. Demonic. And what they say that these entities are actually demons portraying these things, and it's a part. The idea is it's a part of how the devil is going to trick everybody and deceive everybody. And the scenario that's been put forward and we won't know until we get there. But the idea that this is one of the scenarios they think that is a hypothesis of how this is going to play out. This super intelligent alien from outer space is going to come to Earth, solve all the world's problems, and everybody in the world is our Savior. He's our answer to all of our problems that we've ever had. Hunger, poverty, all these things. He's going to fix everything and establishes for the first time worldwide peace. It's going to be an alien from outer space. They're going to introduce him. This is some weird name from whatever planet from outer space. And their point is this: who else could do that kind of miraculous works but a super intelligent, advanced whatever? And they're going to present him, and the whole time he's actually going to be a demon. Satan, with Satan behind him. I'm not saying that's how it's going to play out, but that the thing is, Christians, I'm hearing a lot of Christian people that are really, they're getting into and fascinated by this whole genre, I guess you call this whole genre of stuff. I think the thing is, we're going to need to be prepared to help and guide some of these people and give some of those answers to those people when they got some questions about some of these weird things that are happening or that's being presented. To me, it's idea as Christians, we need to have our eyes wide open and be very alert and paying attention, because I can see how Satan will use a lot of this stuff to deceive people and trick people into going down that path. We need to be aware and very awake to what's going on and what he's doing. So anyway, get off that. Got to move on. So taking captive, then he says, and we are ready to punish all disobedience whenever your obedience is complete. Remember, this chapter and the next chapter, he is addressing the problem of false teachers in the church. And this is why he's talking about taking captive every thought and destroying speculations and every lofty thing. These false teachers in the church were introducing a lot of false teaching. And here's Paul talking about, and as he says, we're ready to punish all disobedience, which would be teaching things that weren't. So what was his punishment? Ready to punish all disobedience. What was his punishment? Now you're probably going to have to call upon your knowledge of not just 2 Corinthians, but all of Paul's writings in the New Testament. What did Paul call on the churches whenever he encountered people that were being disobedient? I think that we saw some of it in 1 Corinthians, in the beginning of 1 Corinthians. What was his answer as far as how do you discipline? How do you discipline these people that are being disobedient? Yeah, I know how Juan feels now. He's always going on and on about you guys. Yeah, and he's always. I don't know if you ever watched. I don't know if you ever watched some of those. He's always picking on Michael Albert. He's nicknamed him Silent Mike because he sits back there. He never talks. Silent Mike. Paul tells us that whenever they encountered people like this, that they were to be put out of the church. And in fact, then he goes on to say he says to not even eat with those people. And he makes a point that he's talking about disciplining somebody that professes to be a Christian. He said not somebody out in the world that's not a saved person, but he said somebody in the church that's disrupting the church and teaching things that are not right and whatever. Paul says, put them out of the church, and don't even eat with those people. And he also talks about turning. He mentions some specific individuals and talks about turning them over to Satan. But he says for the purpose that with time they'll come back. And the idea was, if we just wash our hands of you, turn you over to Satan, the devil's going to take, and the next thing you know, by the time the devil's done with you, you're going to be so miserable. And that's not like it. He's going to make your life so miserable. You're going to want to come back. And that's what Paul's point was when he talked about, I'm turning this individual over to the devil, to Satan. In other words, if you're going to be turned over to Satan, then you don't have God. And next thing you know, your life will be so messed up. his point is you'll wake up and you'll want to come back and straighten up. So, talks about confidence. If anyone is confident in himself that he is Christ, let him consider this again within himself. So, what are you confident about? You said, you are looking at things as they are outwardly. Looks, as the old saying is, looks can be deceiving. And this is the thing we've seen before. And here's as an example. And it applies to this passage of Scripture too. We've seen people that they're in church every Sunday. They put all kinds of money in the offering plate. Well, this is a good, wonderful person. I see here's some wheels turning. What is that?
We need to be smart enough to recognize that. We need to be familiar with the scriptures and recognize it.
Yeah. This is the thing. Well, yeah, and this is the thing we talk about. You're looking at things as they are outwardly. How many times we've heard of cases, and they interviewed people like the neighbors of people like Jeffrey Dahmer and Ted Bundy and some of these people that were serial killers. And like I said, I remember one instance, and I've heard it over and over again, a lot of different cases, but Jeffrey Dahmer and the neighbors were talking about, they were just so shocked and surprised when they got the news came out. And they said because he was just the best neighbor.
They don't recognize it. People don't recognize it.
Sheep in wolf skulls.
Yeah. John Wayne Gacy. I mean, that was the thing, he was, entertaining the little kids in his little clown outfit. And everybody just thought, they kind of get the image of a kind little grandpa, coming and entertaining those little kids. How nice and sweet that is.
You see that in those cults. You see that in those cults, those leaders. They have these people all, they don't believe all of this stuff. And they get them, one, have them all drink this stuff.
Jim Jones.
Killed a whole bunch of people.
Jim Jones, Guyana. Yeah, he was in Guyana. He was don't drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah, that became a catchphrase. Don't drink the Kool-Aid. We started out as a Methodist preacher.
They really can make people believe.
Well, here's the thing. Jim Jones got all these people. They were poor. It was a really poor section of California, I think, was it? I can't remember. Anyway, and he was targeting all these poor people and poverty people and had them in church, and what that was one of the things is like he got some resources, and he was feeding these people, big bunch of people. He was feeding these people, and everybody's thinking about how wonderful. He's a Methodist preacher, and he's feeding all this flock, these people that are poor and can't afford and whatever, and he's taking care of them, and he's feeding them. Yeah, the next thing you know, he's having to drink the Kool-Aid,
Well, they had one in Texas.
Waco, yeah. David Koresh.
And they had all of them in this place.
Yeah.
And they really aren't convincing, I guess.
So here's the thing, Paul, that's the point of saying, he's telling the congregation, and in reference to these false teachers, you're looking at things as they are outwardly. The encouragement is, you need to be taking a look at them inwardly. What are they like? What are they like when nobody, we see them on Sunday morning, but what about the rest of the week? How are they? What do they do? How do they act? All but everywhere else but church. So anyway, if anyone is confident in himself, what are we confident about?
Confident that the Bible is the truth.
Confident that this Bible is the truth, okay? Confident that Jesus is the Son of God, yes, okay?
And then His Word says, that's what we are to be.
Yeah.
And then our own well-being, that we can make decisions we should make.
Yeah.
We should be confident about that.
Okay.
Confident judged by faith, words.
Okay. How about speculations? This was what I just saw it yesterday. It made me think about. Some guy was talking about, they were having a discussion about the rapture and the day of judgment. And this guy was talking about, well, here's the thing, the confusion and everybody's anticipation and anticipating it, being here, getting and arriving and coming. And he says, the day of judgment has already happened. This guy that was the interviewer, and he's like, kind of explain. He's like, day of judgment was 1757. I was like, what? And he was kept quoting some theologian, philosopher that I didn't recognize the guy's name, whatever, but he was trying to. I was happy under the comments. It was a Facebook thing. In the comments, people make comments. I don't remember how many there were, but it was like everybody was like, "What a quack!" I mean, that was their attitude. Where is this guy coming up with this stuff? And there you go. There's an speculation. Oh, day of judgment's already happened. Okay. Anyway, what are we confident about? You mentioned judgment, that we're going to be judged. In my mind, I'm confident we're going to be judged by a fair judge. He's going to be fair. And part of that being fair is His mercy, His grace, His forgiveness. I'm confident that I don't have to worry about the judgment. John writes, these things I have written that you might know that you have eternal life. And we all key on, whenever that verse comes around, I key on it that he said that you will know. How many times in the past, have I talked to people, if you today had that question, if you were to die tonight, where would you spend eternity? Well, I would hope I would go to heaven. And I'll tell you some people that were members of this church many, many, many years and talk about, I would hope that I would make it. And I'm thinking, the point about that, hopefully, that we've got them convinced. John says, these things I have written that you would know you're going to go. Not that I hope I'm going to go, but that I know I'm going. What were those things? Your faith. He talks about your faith in Jesus. And the point was, if you have that, you will know. If you have faith and trust in Jesus, you can know you're going to go to heaven. And I'm confident He's coming back. I'm confident He's coming back. He's coming back. Okay. So he talks about Or even if I boast somewhat further about our authority, is it okay to boast?
Actual.
It's factual?
It's a fact. I mean, it's not really, it's also have to convince somebody you know what you're talking about. But impressive, but not so good.
I would say it depends on the subject.
Okay, depending on the subject. Let me just say, when is being boastful not okay? We'll flip the coin and just take a look at it from that angle. Or is there a difference between boasting and bragging? No. I've got some people like, okay. So when is it not okay? What?
When it's not the truth.
When it's not true? Okay. All right, let me just. I know everybody knows this. Everybody knows this guy or has encountered this person, not a specific person, but I know when we were in college and just different places. This is the guy that high school. Remember, there was an individual in high school. But anyway, he was the person. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. He's done it better, bigger, greater, and if he hadn't, it was his brother did. Anybody ever run into those people? It was like, yeah, it doesn't matter what, and talk about all the things they've done. I remember one of the guys in Bible college, one of those guys in Bible college, and he was talking about all the different things he'd done, and when somebody finally spoke up and said, if you really did all those things, you'd have to be 100 years old.
I know it all.
Yeah. 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 I think it's not okay. It's wrong. I guess you say when, depending on what your motivation is, and if your motivation is just because you want to impress people and see, look at me, that's probably not okay. So, as Paul talks about, even if I boast somewhat further about our authority, so we're going to assume it's okay. If Paul's doing it, it's okay. What would make it okay?
I would say when you're talking about Jesus.
Okay. Yeah.
Not taking credit.
Not taking credit. Okay. Boasting about Jesus and not taking credit. Okay. Yeah, I can think about, like, say, sometimes maybe on like, say, a corporate level or like a congregation, and and talk about. You can talk about things that the congregation has accomplished, whatever. But yeah, there's not any one individual that's wanting to take credit for. It's like we did this or we did that kind of thing. Paul is talking about boasting about our authority, but here's the thing. The caveat here is, like I say, look at the attitude here. The authority which the Lord gave for building you up and not for destroying you. What was the Lord? The Lord gave him authority, and that authority was for the building of them up and not for destroying them. I think when Paul talks about, if I boast somewhat further about our authority, that word boast may not be the right, to me, might not be the right word there. I think what he was saying was, they basically were verbally making sure everybody understood, the buck stops here kind of idea. As the church leadership, reminding people we are the authority, and you have to listen to us, kind of thing. And they would do it in such a way it wasn't bragging about it. It was just making you remember. Hey, remember. I think about the law enforcement. Sometimes they have to get people's attention, remind them, listen, we're the law, and you have to obey. And I think this is kind of the vein in which Paul's talking about here when he talks about boasting. He's reminding them, you know what, we're the authority. So as the authority, you must follow.
My commentary says, you may think I overstated the authority. Not bragging, but overstated.
Oh, okay. Overstated. Okay. Then he goes on and he talks about that authority. His letters are weighty and strong, but his personal presence that's what they were saying about him. But his presence is unimpressive, his speech contemptible. That was what we talked about last week about they were kind of accusing Paul being two-faced. Oh yeah, when you're with us, you're not all that big and bad, but when you write his letters, you're the tough guy kind of thing. And he's wanting us to remember that let us such a person consider that what we are in word by letters, when absent, such persons we are in deed when present. So Paul's reminding them that's not the case. I'm the same person behind the ink pen as I am when I'm with you. I'm not one way or the other, different. But then he says, for we are not bold to class or compare ourselves with some of those who commend themselves. But when they measure themselves by themselves, compare themselves with themselves, they are without understanding. So what do you measure yourself by?
What would Jesus do?
Do it.
What would Jesus do?
The old quote, what would Jesus do? Okay. I think about, he talks about comparing, measuring themselves by themselves, comparing themselves with themselves. I years ago, we used to help Tom Banks doing electrical work, whatever. But anyway, one of the guys that we knew was a guy named Joe, who was Jewish. He was kind of like Timothy, one Jewish parent, and the other one was not a Jewish parent, kind of thing. But he identified as Jewish. Well, a fast was going on, and like I say, we knew that the timeline for the fast ends at a certain time. I remember a certain time, whatever. Well, we'd been working on our job, the project, and we'd taken a break, went to lunch at the restaurant. He starts getting food. Tom, the honorary guy that Tom said, wait a minute, hold it. You're supposed to be on a fast. You're breaking the fast. And his way he looked at it is like, well, I'm like the last guy to break it. As if that makes it okay. that's what he was doing. He's comparing himself with like say, comparing himself with themselves kind of idea. It's like, I did better than they did. I did. The point is, that still doesn't make it okay. But that's the way he looks at it. It's like, I'm one of the last ones to break the fast. I did a lot better than all the rest of them. It takes me, it can take many different forms. I remember when I was in Cameron University, Dr. Ralph Alexander's class, and he would give the test, and this was how his protocol was. After the test was over, he would go over, okay, the test and the answers. And this is the only professor I ever had that did this. He said, okay, on question number 1, like 40% of you missed this question, got it wrong. 40%. Is there what happened here? Somebody spoke up and said something. I don't remember you even lecturing on that particular thing in class. And there were 2 or 3 other people said, yeah, I don't have any notes on that. I don't remember. And his assumption was that that many people, he had a percentage, I can't remember what the percentage was, but if that many people missed it, he automatically assumed it was my fault as a teacher. So he'd say, yeah, some people say, yeah, I don't remember. And he'd say, okay, all right, for you all those people that missed that question, add 2 points to your test score. Add 2. And he said, then see me after class and I'll adjust it in the grade book. Okay. Well, this girl, I remember right out of high school, freshman, sitting up on the front row. Well, I got it right. And he's like, okay. All right, now on to question number 2. Well, every time we'd have this, and she would speak up and say, well, I got it. He got it right. But she made an 8 on the test. And he was like, what do you want me to do? He said, add some more points to your grade?
Or recommend you.
And she was like, no, I just, I studied and I did whatever, blah, 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 in here too. And I got the answers correct. And so Dr. Alexander said, okay. All right, she was making such a fuss about it. All you people I told you to add points to your test, take them back on. Oh, it was a hush. And there was a sergeant, an active duty sergeant sitting on the back row. I mean, he was that stereotypical big, like a drill sergeant looking guy, big hulking guy, whatever. And I remember he hollered out, hey, you up on the front row. And she turned around and looked, and he said, mind your own business. And Dr. Alexander's like, he just kind of like gave her that look, like, I remember after class, she caught me out in the hallway because she knew I was a pastor in her church. And she said, they all hate me now. I said, no, they don't hate you. I said, girl, you're going to need to learn in this life. If somebody gets a break, be happy for them. Even though it doesn't maybe look fair to you or whatever, if somebody gets a break, you be happy for them. And from that time on, she never did.
Maybe the next time she would have been the one that missed it.
Yeah.
If she, and we're going to just be really smart too.
Yeah, she was a really smart student. Yeah.
She was bragging about her.
Yeah, but that's the thing. As an example, she's comparing herself to everybody else in that class. We measure ourselves up, and that's what Paul's point is. We measure ourselves up, and we compare ourselves with who? Jesus. Like you said, what would Jesus do? If we're gonna figure out how good am I doing, what kind of a person am I, you look at the ruler, the yardstick. That's the point. I have to have an absolute. He's the absolute. That's the picture we should be trying to compare to. Of course, for some people, like, oh man, it's a lot. I look a lot better when I compare myself to my neighbor, but I have to compare myself to Jesus. Well, yeah, but we understand that's the thing. If you try, and that's why he's saying those that compare themselves with themselves are without understanding. In other words, no wisdom. There's no wisdom there. If I want to compare myself to my neighbor instead of Jesus, I'm not very wise. I have no understanding. Kind of like I think about, was it the fairy tale? The lady goes, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? And the mirror keeps lying to her. Why, you are. She's not getting an accurate picture of what's real, So, okay. So the last question was, he who boasts is to boast in the Lord, for it is not he who commends himself that is approved, but he whom the Lord commends. So, how do we get commended by God? How does a person acquire commendation by God? What do we have to do to receive God's commendation? Obey. Obedience. Yes. This is going to be and this is the thing. And I heard there was a really good teaching we're talking about the Day of Judgment. You realize there's two different ones. We talk about the great white throne judgment, and there's one of the judgments is when God separates the goats from the sheep. You're going to hell. You're going to heaven. But then there's another judgment that's going to be just for us Christians, and that judgment is all about handing out your rewards or your stars in your crown. And I read, and somebody mentioned it, and I kind of went back and studied it, and that biblically that stands to reason that there will be another time, and we're going to come before him, and he will, hand out commendations and based upon, what did we do? What things did we do here? What good deeds did we? It's not the good deeds that's going to get us there, but after we do get there, we're going to get stars in our crown for many of the things that we did here on this earth. And that basically obedience. Somebody that needed a handout, somebody needed some groceries, somebody that needed they needed gas in their car, they didn't have any money. Those kinds of things, you'll get a star in the crown. We're being obedient, because what did Jesus say? When you've done it unto the least of these, you've done it unto me. Okay. Next week, chapter 11, prayer. Prayer concerns that we have. Vicky, of course, if you lead.
Remember Sam?
Sam, yes. Pray that you'll listen to the voice of reason, which would be Claire. We don't want him injured any more than he already is. Okay. Vicky and Sam, any other prayer matters, concerns that we have? Preston goes to the doctor tomorrow. He's with us? It's really a good sign, but still, ever since his discharge from the hospital, nausea, lots of nausea. So hopefully the doctor can maybe figure it out, give him something to straighten that out. Anyway, I can take about just about anything, but being nausea, that's pretty rough. So, okay. Have you heard anything from Juan? I heard you think he said he's better.
I talked to him today and he said he was doing better.
Better, okay.
I asked him if he needed somebody to come out and pet his cows for him. He said no.
Okay. All right. Okay. Any,
Francis is back from Thursday.
okay. Did they ever determine what was going on with that?
Chronic pain.
Okay. All right.
And I put on there prayers for Dan's back.
Dan Braden? I think, yeah, he's been having issues. Okay. All right, well, I'm gonna ask Mike then if you will close us with prayer tonight then.
Father, we just thank you